Hello there. There are certain names that immediately bring about a certain reaction. So let's try this one out. Jonah. First thing I think of is blatant disobedience. You know why? Because he blatantly disobeyed. But there's so much richness in the story of Jonah that brings out the richness of Jonah's God, who happens to be our God as well. So when God said left, Jonah went right, the exact opposite. In fact, verse 3 in Jonah 1 says, Jonah got up and went in the opposite direction to get away from the Lord. So what worked for Jonah was he got away from what the Lord was wanting him to do, but he did not get away from the Lord. You can't get away from the Lord. We can disobey, and clearly God calls us and invites us to obey him, to trust him, to do what he leads us to do, to follow his word, fact. But you can't get away from the voice and the drawing of the Lord. He leaves the 99 to go get the one. Here's the point that I want to bring up. When the people on the ship realized, they looked to God, small g, for who the crud ticked the gods off. And they're asking each other, excuse me, and they finally get to Jonah. He said, where are you from? What's your line of work? What's your story? Verse 9 in Jonah 1 says this, Jonah answered, I am a Hebrew. I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the land. Jonah, even in his disobedience, recognized himself as a worshiper, recognized God as great, and I find it imperative to notice that he recognizes God as the God of the land and the sea is what they're in the middle of, and the sea is what is threatening to take their very lives. Even in disobedience, Jonah recognized himself as a worshiper, his God as worthy of worship, and his God as over the land and the sea. So where are you today? Are you moving in the direction of God or the opposite direction of his will for your life? Regardless, he's with you. Regardless, he's using life circumstances to get us back to his plan. But he's with us wherever we are, utilizing our circumstances, our surroundings, and even a great fish to be the Uber that got Jonah back on track. And that didn't fix everything, because Jonah's story goes on. Jonah continues to struggle, but God continues to talk and God continues to draw. And one last observation that I find very interesting. His fellow sailors who made no profession of faith, through these circumstances, through Jonah's disobedience, and through God revealing himself in this situation, they worshiped God. You know what they didn't do? They didn't judge Jonah. In fact, they didn't even want to throw him overboard. The only reason they did that is because they knew God wanted them to. They didn't judge him. Jonah heard God's voice. The other sailors saw God's hand and saw God's faithfulness. God speaks to us, uses circumstances. And God is worthy of not only worship, but also of obedience. Let's worship and let's obey him today. He's a good God.